Welcome to Toni Time.
Hi, glad to be here.
Well, great to have you here. This is my first show since the virus, and being at the studio and everything and doing it on Zoom. I think it's great. So I've got some questions for you.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I can handle it.
Okay. When you first became the mayor, what were your goals and ideas?
Well, my biggest goal was to change the perception of the community. For a long time, we were the butt of many jokes, and the economy had gone south for a number of reasons. We had the stereotype of being an old mill town, a dying old mill town. And so I wanted to make sure that we could reverse that. One of the department heads came up to me and said, Alan, if you want to improve this community, if you just do one thing and one thing only, that is to make it such that the government appears and is stable so that investors will come and put their money here, because investors will not invest in any condition that they think their money is jeopardized. So my first obligation and goal was to stabilize the city government, which I think we've done really well, even though we vary in terms of our political spectrums. We all get along, we don't voice our displeasures publicly, and we move on after every single vote. And the results have been, of course, that investors have come, the downtown and the city have changed dramatically. People brag about living here now. I mean, before I was mayor, on Facebook and social media, when the question was, where do you live? It was always in the Portland area. Now, because of all the things we've implemented, they're saying, I live in Biddeford, and they say that proudly. So I think that was the biggest thing that I did in terms of that global vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. Such a change in the city for a positive, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was knocking on doors last week, I guess, and a woman came up to me, saying, oh yeah, I was originally from Kennebunk, and if you told me 10 years ago I was going to live in Biddeford, there was no way that was going to happen.
Right.
Because I love what's happening here. And she said, my daughter and son-in-law who are living in Boston are moving here now, and they're specific. They were not going to Kennebunk, and they were not going to Kennebunkport. They wanted to come to Biddeford because of what they heard.
That is wonderful.
It makes me feel good. I mean, it's that resurrection pride. It's that renaissance we were talking about. I mean, the renaissance is physical in terms of the old mill buildings being redeveloped, but there's also a psychological renaissance that people just believe in Biddeford and like what they're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how does Biddeford compare to today with the way it was when you first took office?
Biddeford's changed quite a bit. If I look back when I was a kid, for example, Biddeford was the hub of York County.
Yeah.
It was bustling. The mills were full. You had thousands of people working in there. People came from the outside to Biddeford because it was a place to go. Through the 70s and 80s, that began to wane as the mills went south, and then there was a Great Recession and everything else that took place. And so by the time I became mayor, I think Biddeford's pride was sagging. And if you looked at the downtown and you looked elsewhere, you would see a city in decline. And I knew that we could change that because I knew the bones of Biddeford were good. In other words, if you look at the architecture, if you looked at, we have a beach, a river, many parks, and most importantly, good, strong, hardworking people. And I felt that if we could build off of that, we could resurrect or recreate what I experienced when I was younger.
Oh, for sure. What are you most proud of, Alan?
I think having pride in community is what I feed off. That really resonates with me, but there are a number of physical things that we did too. So for example, the elimination of Maine Energy, I think, was a catalyst. It's interesting to me how that was a difficult decision to make for some people. I mean, I know there were jobs at stake and so on and so forth. In fact, even a couple of weeks ago, on social media, some people were complaining to me about the loss of jobs. But I recognized even then that that had to take place because of the odors and issues, but also because of the psychological implications of being a trash town. I think that pulled people down. So the elimination of Maine Energy obviously was a highlight. I remember a reporter telling me after we signed the deal, well, this is, you know, in your first year, I mean, how are you going to top this? Well, I think we have. I think we moved beyond that. And the proof is in the pudding in being able to work with investors and developers to resurrect mill buildings that were decrepit and had their own issues, partnering with them and working with the downtown for beauty, to make people want to come here. So there's a lot of things psychologically, I think, that are important, as well as the physical things that we've done.
Absolutely. Now, where do we go from here, Alan?
There's still a lot more to be done. I mean, if you look just on the economic scale, we have to consider what's going to happen on the Maine Energy lot.
Yeah.
Jim Brady and Brian Ang are the developers that are working on that. Conceptually, they're talking about 5 buildings on that particular site: retail, commercial, residential. The city got a $1.2 million grant to rebuild Pearl Street, which will change that entire neighborhood, and it'll be identified and labeled as the Pearl Street area so that people will know where to go. That's exciting. Of course, the old Saco Lowell building that's been decrepit since the 1960s when there was a fire that burned most of it. That's being redeveloped as we speak. Across the street, Tim Harrington has bought up a pile of land, which was known as the Diamond National Project, a property. He's talking about condos and rental units. He's talking about constructing a park, completing the Riverwalk, you know, exciting things. But I think it's important for us to remember we've reached a point of development now that we can be very selective in terms of what we want. Some of the mill buildings, for example, were in bad shape. And we worked with some extraordinarily talented developers. But the people of Biddeford have to know that some of those buildings were in such condition that they languished on the market for years. So for example, River Dam, which is by the river itself, Blaze Brewing is in that area. There was a wall there that was about to collapse into the river, and most people would not touch it. So we worked with the developers to come up with a deal where we would be able to give them a TIF for that in exchange for an elevator service so the public would have access to the Riverwalk. Saco Lowell building was the same thing. I mean, it's just in horrible condition. The bathroom facilities entered directly into the river. There was nothing in between. So again, if a developer went in there to try to do it, it was problematic. But again, we found a developer that would be able to work with. But we can be selective. So that's one thing that, you know, I guess I should backtrack. Development for the sake of development is not a good thing. You have to now be at a point where you can target what you want to develop. And the other thing, the byproduct of all this interest in Biddeford, and that's been exacerbated by COVID, is the pressures on housing. There's no doubt that housing costs have gone through the roof. But people have to recognize it's not just Biddeford. It's all of southern Maine. It's up and down the coast, and everybody's feeling the pressure because what's happened is there's a limited supply of available buildings, and people from elsewhere are moving here because they want to get away from the conditions wherever it is, whether it's California and the drought or New York and its situation. They want to come here, and they have more disposable income, and they are paying top dollar. In fact, there are bidding wars over housing, which by Maine state law triggers the valuation increases that every taxpayer in Biddeford happened to see in the past revaluation. So we have to be able to come to terms with how we're going to deal with that. And the toolbox has a few tools in there, but no simple solution. You know, there's nothing, I can't snap my fingers and bingo, it's fixed. There are many small things that we can do, and hopefully the whole ends up being more than the sum of the parts.
Wow. It's a lot, Alan. It's a lot.
Yeah, but it's exciting. I mean, there's challenges.
Oh, yeah.
But the past 10 years have been challenges, and I think we've delivered on that. And so I'm confident that whoever I have is working with as a council, because of the extraordinary staff we have, that we can move past some of the problems that we're going to be facing.
And you do have an extraordinary staff. You know, they're loyal, they're dedicated. It's great.
Yeah, when I was at Biddeford High School, I taught there for 35 years and I coached ice hockey. And I remember Lewiston High School had a coach that they hired. He had never coached hockey before. And he was a football coach. And I remember asking him, how are you going to be able to do this transition? He said, Alan, I know I have the horses. I'm just going to ride them.
Right.
I realized when I became mayor, my God, there's so much talent in City Hall. If just let them do their work, use their creativity, it will pay dividends. And sure enough,
it has, for sure. Now, what issues remain, Alan?
Well, I said, I think housing's a big one. That we have to be able to find a way to deal with that. The other thing that I think is really important is that Biddeford has come so far in terms of economic development and the new restaurants and the new shops and all that stuff, which, people ooh and ah about, we get defined as a cool city and all that stuff. But I think it's important to go back to when I was a kid, when neighborhoods were connected to each other. So I think city government now has to move to facilitate introductions to neighborhoods, bridges into neighborhoods to make people feel good about the community, good about places which they live, good about each other, talk to each other. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I started Winterfest and tried to initiate a spring festival and work with River Jam in the heart of Biddeford, because I think that breaks down barriers when people can laugh and talk to each other, build community. So in this last term, my primary objective is to not begin, because I've been doing that right along actually, is to continue and expand the building of bridges to different neighborhoods so that people feel part of the community.
For sure. And you have created all that. And I've been here 18 years, and I've watched it grow and I've seen what you've done. Why
but
should
the thing is, Toni, if I could backtrack,
yeah.
When I grew up, or when I was teaching, for example, Biddeford was a very Franco community. If you went to a basketball game and looked at the scoreboard, they would be all essentially Franco names. Last time I went pre-COVID, there were like 2 Franco names up there.
Right.
We have become more diversified. We have people that have moved here and they have different ethnicities. You also have many immigrants that now live in this community. Population I've reached out to, and I formed some great friendships there. But those are the types of people, whether it's old, Biddeford being the youngest community, we got the old people, Biddeford was always defined as the memes and the pepes. That's no longer true. They are there, but we also have young people. And so when I talk about building bridges, I'm talking about different ethnicities, different populations, different age brackets, different genders, so that everybody can feel part of what's happening in this community.
That's for sure. Now, why should voters choose you over your opponent?
A couple of things. First off, I don't think it's a good thing to change captains in the middle of a cruise. We're on a roll. There's no doubt about that. And I have been very involved in everything. In fact, I think you'll see my fingerprints in just about everything that has happened within the community over the last 10 years. The second thing is important. The mayor is the focal point or the spokesperson of the community. I've lived here all my life. I'm not a newbie. I lived here. I know the history. I know the people. I know the icons. I know everything about it. And so my bubble of life is not just a little episode of, 5 years or 10 years. I know how things came to be. And whenever a resident reaches out, for example, with an issue, I know who to talk to. So I see myself as a facilitator, as a bridge. I use that word quite often, but as a bridge to the community and so forth. So if people are happy with what they see, if they like the development, if they're proud of being a resident of Biddeford, then I would ask them to let me continue the projects that I hoped to finish so that I can have this great foundation so that whoever comes after me will be able to use that as a launching pad for even more and better things. Because I think our future is extremely bright.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. And you do know, and you have the history. Now, tell us about your background.
Well, like I said, I grew up in Biddeford. I grew up in Graham Street. My nephew actually owns the building in which I grew up in. My mother was there for 40 some odd years. Went to St. Mary's Grammar School, went to Biddeford High School, then went to UMO. I taught for 35 years, coached ice hockey, a little bit of soccer. And that's, it's interesting to me looking back because like so many kids, when they get out of high school, they're like, I got to get out of this place. I got to get out of this place. And I remember thinking about that. I remember this distinct memory. I remember leaning my head against a wall in a history class, a US history class. Ironically, the room I actually ended up teaching in, thinking, I'm gone, I'm history. A strange thing happened on the way to the rodeo. I fell in love with the idea of teaching. I had majored in psychology, and I thought about teaching. And I had to take a bunch of extra courses and so forth. But when I came to Biddeford with an idea, well, maybe I'll teach 5 years, then I'll go into a profession and make more money, I began to really like the kids and their parents because there was something about Biddeford kids. I think about the football squads back then. A lot of the kids were really small and they weren't as big as some of their opponents, but they always beat them because they worked harder than anybody else worked. And so when I look at what my students are doing today, they are all over the world doing incredible things, but hard work. And so for me, growing up, Biddeford was my whole being. I bled orange and black, but as I became a teacher, and then as I got involved in politics, because of course I served on the city council for 18 years, and I was council president, I think for 4 terms. And then I was in the Maine legislature for another 8 years. I can tell you that no matter where I have gone, I brag about the people of Biddeford because, they're my bread and butter. I do things because I respect their integrity and their work ethic so much.
Wow. That is so amazing, Alan. What you've accomplished, your love for Biddeford, and you stick with it. You stick with all of it.
Well, I've been blessed too. Like we said before, there's a great staff here. The city has great employees that make life a lot easier. And I've been blessed with some incredibly talented counselors as well. Again, over the I've worked with many people in the council. I've appointed quite a few counselors. In fact, even my opponent, I appointed once upon a time when I wanted to diversify the council and get more women on.
Yeah.
But it's being able to work with people who want to do something special for the people here. They want to make sure that whatever decision they make is the best it can possibly be. And so even though we may defer on how we get there, the goal or objective is always the same, to make Biddeford a better place in which to live, work, and play. So we're all on the same page. It's just a question of whether we're speed readers or slow readers or skipping pages or whatever.
For sure. Now, what has been your biggest challenge over the years?
Making people believe that there was something here that could be improved. There was always this element of doubt. It's sort of like, I don't know, when I was teaching, there were always kids who had the talent, but didn't have the self-esteem to succeed. And Biddeford, when I first became mayor, seemed to lack self-esteem. Oh, there were pockets of pride, but I'm talking conceptually over the big picture. So a lot of times we were doing things and people would say, oh, that's not going to happen. You're just nothing but a dreamer. The city manager, Jim Bennett, told me, he said, Alan, we're not doing things in a chess game per se. it's a three-dimensional chess game. And it's going to take a while for people to understand why we do this, that, or the other thing. It was frustrating, you know, when I see on social media, for example, that's no way. The Lincoln Mill, for example, that's a hoax. It's never going to happen. Looking out of my mirror right now, I mean, my window, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's all part of the plan. Everything we did was strategic, whether it was investing in the downtown with flowers and trees and cobblestone, or making certain partnerships with some developers, whatever it was, there was a plan behind it. And so I get great satisfaction today when I go campaigning, people say, you know, Alan, I didn't understand what you were doing 2 years ago. I get it now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that was the biggest thing, how to convince people to believe in the community and believe that they could achieve as collectively as a group, great things. And now I think people not understand that anything is possible.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I look at it as you talk the talk and you walk the walk.
Well, I try to. I practice what I preach and, you know, those types of things. So, you know, I think I'm the city's biggest cheerleader. Oh,
I know, but
25 pounds, maybe I am a bigger cheerleader. I don't know.
Oh, now come on. Well, Alan, you know, I really want to thank you for your time. This was really important for me to be able to get your message out there, because I have seen what you've accomplished as long as I've lived here. And I'm getting up to almost 20 years living here.
Yeah.
And I've seen the change. I've experienced it and I've watched you, and I know you as a friend, and I know your heart is where it should be.
Well, as I said, I'm connected. I want to show you something though.
Okay? Yeah, sure. Sure.
I want to show you.
Okay.
That's my Meme and Pepe.
Oh, okay.
They came to Biddeford in 1916 or 1917. They came from Quebec, of course. You know, I'm frank. Those are the types of roots. They came here and they were hardworking, and that's of which I have the most pride. The idea that we have so many ethnicities that came to work in those mills, and they built those mills, and they built the downtown, and they created this foundation. And I'm lucky enough to be able to add to that foundation.
For sure. For sure. And I'm sure they're looking at you very proud, very happy that you're continuing the work.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm in a very good place. You know, I'm pumped. I got the energy. Things are going great, you know, and I've got so much support in terms of, you know, the people here. It's you know, they say timing is everything. Man, I time this really well because I've really, really been blessed.
You have. And I think you're getting a little verklempt, as they say.
Well,
you're a little verklempt, little tear. But Alan, I want to thank you so much. You've just done amazing. And I want to remind everybody to go to the polls. Vote for Alan. You've had a dream, you're carrying it on, and it shows. So I'll end our message. You talk the talk and you walk the walk. Now I got to get you a cowboy hat.
Okay, partner.
Okay. We'll talk soon, Alan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.